The text came in at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, while I was still pulling on my badge lanyard before heading out the door. Hey, grab that old laptop bag from your closet. The one with the silver clip. Looked way nicer than mine for my client lunch today. Hope that's okay. I stood completely still in my hallway for about 4 seconds. Then I typed back, sure. Have a great lunch. Then I called my company's IT security hotline. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old. And I've worked as a senior data compliance officer at a biotech research firm for the past 4 years. My brother is 28. His name is Ryan. And he has never once in his life asked permission before taking something that belonged to me. Not my childhood bike. Not my car in college. Not my Netflix password, which I only discovered he'd shared with 11 people when I got a flagged account notice. Ryan operates under the assumption that anything I own is also, in some loosely defined way, available to him. I had told myself I was used to it. I was not used to this. That bag was not a laptop bag. I mean, it looked like one. Dark navy, silver hardware, padded interior. The kind of thing you'd see a consultant carry into a WeWork. But inside the front zippered pocket, clipped to the interior panel, was a security access card that unlocked the cold storage lab on the 4th floor of our research building. And tucked into the padded main compartment, sealed in a tamper-evident sleeve I had stupidly left inside after a late Friday, was a portable encrypted hard drive containing 14 months of proprietary clinical trial data for a late-stage oncology drug that our company had spent approximately $43 million developing. The drive was not supposed to leave our building. The security card was not supposed to leave my person. Both of those things were outlined in the confidentiality agreement I had signed. The compliance training I completed every 6 months, and the specific incident protocol my manager had reviewed with me personally when I was promoted. I knew all of that when I typed, sure. Have a great lunch. I knew all of it. And I still sent it. Because some part of me that I am not proud of wanted to see what would happen next. The IT security line picked up on the second ring. I told the woman on the other end my employee ID, my clearance level, and exactly what had left the building. She put me on hold for 40 seconds. When she came back, her voice was different, quieter and more precise. Ms. Claire, I need you to come in immediately. Don't contact the individual who has the bag. Our team will handle location and retrieval. Do you understand? I said I understood. I drove to the office with my hands steady on the wheel and a feeling in my chest that I can only describe as the specific calm that comes after you've already done the most consequential thing, and there's nothing left but to watch it land. Let me back up. Because Ryan didn't become this person overnight. And I didn't become someone who lets things get this far without also explaining why. Our parents are good people. I want to say that clearly and first, because nothing that comes after is about them being bad parents. They are warm and loving and deeply, structurally incapable of believing that Ryan is anything other than someone who just hasn't found his footing yet. He's been not finding his footing since approximately 2014. He dropped out of 2 colleges. Not because he wasn't smart. Ryan is genuinely intelligent, but because structure didn't suit him. Which is a thing my mother said so many times. It stopped sounding like an excuse and started sounding like a personality trait he'd been medically diagnosed with. He borrowed $2,000 from me when I was 26, and paying off my own student loans. He paid back $400 of it over 3 years, then stopped mentioning the rest. And when I brought it up at Thanksgiving, my mother looked at me like I had said something unkind. He went through a phase of selling things, his things, then other people's things on resale apps. I found one of my old textbooks listed under his account. When I told him I wanted it back, he said he hadn't realized I still wanted it. The textbook had been on my shelf in my apartment, which he had been in twice. I changed my locks after that. I did not, however, change the access to my closet at my parents' house, which is where I sometimes kept work materials overnight when I stayed there on the rare occasions I visited. That is my mistake. I own it completely. I should have known better. And I did know better. And I made the choice anyway, because the alternative was having a conversation with my parents about why I needed to treat my childhood closet like a secure facility. And I wasn't ready for that conversation. So in a sense, Ryan didn't go looking for trouble that Tuesday morning. He just walked into the closet at my parents' house, where I had stayed the previous weekend. And he saw a bag that looked professional and clean. And he took it. He probably didn't even hesitate. That doesn't change what was in it. By the time I reached the office, the IT security team had already escalated to legal and to our chief compliance officer, a woman named Dr. Hartwell, who had the specific energy of someone who had spent 20 years anticipating exactly this kind of situation and was quietly unsurprised to find herself in it. She met me in the conference room adjacent to her office, with 2 members of the security team and 1 person from legal who didn't introduce himself but took notes continuously. Walk me through the timeline. Doctor, Hartwell said. I walked through it. All of it. Including the part where I had stayed at my parents' house. Including the part where I knew Ryan had a history of taking things. Including the part where I had not secured the bag separately before leaving. I did not minimize any of it. I had decided in the car that the only version of this I could live with was the one where I was completely honest, even about the parts that reflected badly on me. Doctor. Hartwell listened without expression. When I finished, she asked one question. Before you texted him back? What did you consider calling him instead and asking him to return it without involving us? Yes? I said. Why didn't you? I thought about that for a moment. Because if I called him, he would have apologized and brought it back and nothing would have changed. And the next time I left something somewhere, he could reach it. The same thing would happen again. And eventually the thing he took would matter even more than this one does. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded once. The way people do when they've heard an answer they consider sufficient. And turned to the security team. Ryan was having lunch at a restaurant called Meridian, about 20 minutes from my parents' house. He had, apparently, a meeting with a potential investor for a consulting business. He was trying to start the details of which I did not know, and which, I would later learn, were loosely defined at best. Our company's security team did not go alone, because the encrypted drive technically constituted a potential breach of proprietary research data, and because our legal team had to consider the possibility that the removal had been intentional. They made the decision to involve a data crimes investigator from the firm we retained for exactly these situations. I was not there. I want to be clear about that. I did not go to the restaurant. I did not watch it happen. I sat in the conference room and drank bad coffee and answered questions for another hour while 2 floors away from me. A team was tracking a GPS signal from inside a Navy laptop bag that my brother was probably using as a prop to look more credible to whoever he was having lunch with. My phone buzzed at 12:43 p.m. It was my mother, Claire. What on earth is going on? Ryan just called me. He's very upset. Can you call me, please? I put my phone face down on the table. It buzzed twice more. Then my father called. I let it go to voicemail. The legal associate looked at me and then looked away, which I appreciated. By 2 o'clock, I had a fuller picture. Ryan had been approached at the restaurant by 2 people who identified themselves and explained that they needed to retrieve property belonging to my employer. He had, by his own later account, assumed it was some kind of mistake. He handed over the bag. The security card was still in the front pocket. The encrypted drive was still in the main compartment. Sealed. Apparently untouched. Ryan was asked to remain available for follow-up questions. He was not arrested. That distinction would become important later in about 47 conversations with my family, none of which I was ready to have yet. I left the office at 4:30 with a formal written acknowledgement of the incident. A note in my personnel file that I had self-reported promptly and cooperated fully. And a mandatory follow-up meeting scheduled for Thursday to review my secure storage procedures going forward. Dr. Hartwell stopped me at the elevator. "You did the right thing," she said. "I know that probably doesn't make the next few days easier." "It doesn't," I said. "No." She agreed. "It usually doesn't." My mother called 7 times between 4:30 and 7 o'clock. My father called twice. Ryan sent 3 texts, which escalated in tone from, "Hey, can you call me to Claire? I don't understand what I did wrong to. I can't believe you would do this to me." That last one I read several times. I called my mother back at 7:15. After I had eaten something and sat with my cat for a while, and felt enough like a human being to have a conversation without saying things I couldn't take back. She answered on the first ring. "Claire. What happened, Ryan is beside himself. He said people showed up at his lunch and took your bag and now he might have to talk to investigators. What is going on?" I explained what was in the bag. I explained what the drive contained. I explained my obligations under my employment agreement and the compliance protocols I had signed. I explained that this wasn't a personal decision I had made against Ryan. It was a process that I had set in motion and could not stop once it started. Which was true, and also, if I am being honest, part of why I had started it. There was a long silence, but he didn't know. My mother said. He didn't know what was in it. He just thought it was a bag. I know he didn't know. I said, "That's not the determining factor, Claire." He was embarrassed in front of a potential business contact. He could have lost that deal. "Mom," I said. As calmly as I could, he walked into a closet and took something that wasn't his without asking. That has consequences regardless of what he thought was in it. You could have just called him and asked for it back. There it was. I had been waiting for it. If I had called him, I said. What would have happened the next time? She didn't have an answer for that. But not having an answer didn't mean she agreed with me. That's an important distinction in my family. Silence is not concession. It's just a pause before the next approach. My father was gentler. He told me he understood I had responsibilities, and he didn't doubt that I'd been put in a hard position. He also asked if I thought the response had been a little disproportionate, which is the version of "you went too far" that he uses when he wants to make the same point without making me feel attacked. I told him I thought the response had been exactly proportionate to the actual risk involved, which I knew sounded cold, and which I also meant entirely. Ryan did not call me again that night. I didn't expect him to. The following days were some of the more exhausting of my adult life. Not because anything dramatically terrible happened, but because the sustained low-grade pressure of a family in conflict is its own particular kind of draining. My mother texted me updates about Ryan's emotional state that I had not requested. My aunt, who had apparently been briefed by my mother, sent me a long message about the importance of protecting family above all else, which included the line, "Sometimes we have to look the other way for the people we love," which I read 3 times trying to decide if she understood what she was saying. I did not look the other way. That was, in fact, the entire point. The investigation determined that Ryan had no prior knowledge of what the drive contained and no intent to misuse it. That finding mattered. It meant the situation stayed a civil compliance issue for my employer rather than escalating to anything criminal for Ryan. Our legal team determined that no external parties had been given access to the bag or its contents during the window. It was out of my control. The drive's encryption logs showed no access attempts. The security card had not been used anywhere. In the end, Ryan received a formal letter from our company's legal department documenting the incident and noting that any future unauthorized possession of company property would be treated as intentional. He was not charged with anything. He was not sued. He did not lose anything except the afternoon and, I imagine, a certain amount of credibility with whoever he had been trying to impress at that lunch. I was required to attend a 2-hour refresher on secure materials handling. I was not disciplined beyond that, because I had reported immediately, and the breach had not resulted in any actual data exposure. Dr. Hartwell documented my cooperation prominently. My record remained clean. The harder accounting was with my family. It took about 3 weeks before Ryan and I spoke directly. He called on a Sunday afternoon. And I almost didn't pick up. And then I did because I was tired of waiting for a version of this I was comfortable with, and decided I might have to build it myself. He started with the thing people say when they're apologizing for getting caught rather than for what they did. I just don't understand why you couldn't have called me first. Because it wasn't the first time. I said. It was the pattern. The bag was just the time the pattern had real stakes. I didn't know what was in it. I know you didn't. But Ryan. You didn't ask? You never ask. You just take things and assume it'll be fine because it's usually been fine. A long silence. Then I've been paying you back. I didn't say anything about the money. Not because it didn't matter, but because it wasn't what this conversation was about. I need you to understand something. I said. If that drive had ended up compromised, I would have lost my job. I would have lost my clearance. I could have faced legal liability. And $43 million of research that could help people who are really sick would have been at risk. Not because you're a bad person, but because you didn't think about consequences before you took something that wasn't yours. Another silence. This one felt different. Is the research really for cancer? He asked. Oncology drug trial. I said. Phase 3. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't know that. I know. I said. That's the whole point. We didn't fix everything in that conversation. We didn't fix it in the conversations after that, either. But something shifted. Not in the big performative way that happens in movies, where someone has a single realization and becomes permanently different, more the way things actually change, which is slowly and unevenly and with backsliding and without any clear moment you can point to and say, that's when it turned. My mother, to her credit, stopped sending me updates about Ryan's feelings about 3 weeks in, which I took as a sign that she had started working through her own version of what had happened. My father took me to lunch in the 5th week and told me, very carefully and without ever quite saying the words, that he thought I had made the right call. That was enough. The thing nobody in my family said out loud, but which I believe everyone eventually came to understand, was that I had protected Ryan too. Not by covering for him, by giving him the consequences that, if he encountered something like this again, and he easily could, he now understood the shape of. He knows what taking something without permission can cost now. Not abstractly. Concretely. From an afternoon at a restaurant where 2 people walked up to him and said, "We need that back." I don't know if that changes him. I genuinely don't. But I know it was more honest than looking the other way would have been. I keep my work bag in my locked car now. Not in closets at my parents' house. Not in bags by the door. Not anywhere that requires me to trust that boundaries I've set will be respected without enforcement. That's not cynicism. That's just a policy I should have had already. Dr. Hartwell and I have a quarterly check-in now, which was her suggestion, and which I've come to think of as genuinely useful. She told me once, in one of those check-ins, that the hardest part of compliance work isn't the regulations. It's the moment when following the rules costs you something personally and you have to do it anyway. Because the rules exist for reasons that are bigger than your discomfort. I think about that more than I expected to. I think about the people in the trial. The ones the drug is for. I never met any of them, and I never will. But they're the reason the data has the value it has. And they're the reason the protocols exist. When I made that call at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, I wasn't choosing my career over my brother. I was choosing a set of obligations I had agreed to carry. And I was carrying them. I'm not asking you to think I'm a hero. I'm really not. I made mistakes in this story. I should have secured the bag before leaving. I should have had the boundary conversation with my family years earlier. I should have addressed the pattern long before it had stakes. But when the moment came, I made the call. And I'd make it again.